It's time for what should have been a video game in 1981.
Oh, hello. I'm Eric, and here's the stuff from 1981 that should have been turned into a video game. From the sitcom Different Strokes, a maze game that would later be the inspiration for an episode that would air in 1983. The point of the game would be for your character to crack wise while running around the maze trying to avoid being eaten by the pedophile bike shop owner. Try not to think too much about the video game's title. What you talking about, pedo? From the movie Tarzan the Ape Man, a platformer where your character would swing from vines. Wait, a game like that did come out the next year. From Nickelodeon's variety show, You Can't Do That on Television, for the Intellivision. Finally, your 12-digit keypad will come in handy as you play locker jokes. Pop out of the lockers in time to say the punchline, but watch your timing. Pop out too late, and you get slimed. Pop out too early, you decapitate your friends. And that's what should have been a video game in 1981. I want to play them.
With options like the new IBM printers and the IBM PC network, IBM personal computers, see them at a store near you or call your IBM representative.
So IBM was a huge mainframe company, especially prominent throughout the 60s and into the 70s and even the 80s. But, of course, you had companies like Apple and TRS, Tandy Radio Shack, making their computers that were getting really popular in not only homes, but the small business sector, and of course IBM was like, holy crap, we need to do this.
The IBM PC came out in 1981, model 5150.
So this was not only IBM's first personal computer, it was also the first computer to be called a PC, as we know the term today.
People equated personal computer for the next 2 decades with IBM-compatible computers.
Opened up gaming to a lot more people later on. The PC initially was mostly used for business applications and was actually incredibly poor for handling games.
So while the IBM PC was meant as a business computer, it really didn't have a lot of business software to begin with. It didn't have much of anything.
Mavis Beacon. She broke down those racial barriers in the 80s through her great typing software.
The IBM PCs had this beautiful keyboard that was spring-loaded. Oh, it's a beautiful mechanism where you hit it, ka-ting!
For a while, Apple still had the leg up on business computing. That is until Lotus 123 came along for the PC.
You felt like you were getting work done.
As easy as 1, 2, 3, and opening it up and looking inside. It's pretty easy.
So you get into the early 80s and all of a sudden you got these cheap little, like, pirates of games coming up. You copy them on a 5 1/4, give them to your neighbor, your co-worker. You would trade them and open up gaming to a lot more people.
My first video game was Microsoft Flight Simulator for this old IBM-compatible Epson.
That's how I discovered gaming, was on my 8086 XT,
Yeah, the printer company. They made computers back then. What?
TGA. You only need 4 colors. You only need an ugly red, ugly yellow, ugly blue.
All you need is magenta,
ugly
cyan.
Green. That's all you need.
I don't know why I don't have one of those keyboards. That's just good fun right there. That would give me minutes of entertainment to have.
All of a sudden, the PC shows up and changes the way computing works from here on out.
And yeah, that's continued on to today. And in fact, there's a lot of compatibility in between the old systems and the new ones.
Yeah, and it's the most dominant platform today.
A modern PC is still going to be able to run a lot of the same software if you tweak it enough. It starts changing when you get into the 64-bit stuff, but we're not talking about that.
Do you have ice hockey by Activision?
Think you're ready for it? One of the roughest video games around for your Atari game system? Ready to battle for the puck?
Well...
To inflict fierce body checking? Furious stick checking? Ruthless tripping? You really think you're ready for all that? I'm ready! Fine. Case your charge. Ice hockey by Activision! Insert point.
Okay,
Okay, so one of the Intellivision releases in '81 was Snafu, which is essentially a big problem.
Very grating soundtrack, but ingrained completely in my memory till the end of time.
It's a snafu. It's really a snake game where you gotta block the other snakes. Picture Tron, light cycle game, and you got snafu, but it was multiple players, so it was fun for the entire Intellivision family.
When Mattel got a hold of it, they wanted to call it Snafu, after the military acronym SNAFU, of course standing for Snakes Never Approach Funky Underwear.
You have your snakes, and they're traveling around, and their tail never stops, it's just there forever. It's like a wall, and you have to kind of maneuver, and whichever one of you goes kaboom and crashes into something first loses.
But taking something like that and putting it on a console was kind of genius. Now everyone can play.
Let's just give them more games with better graphics. And so they just kept talking about the graphics and all the ads. Hey, the better graphic system's here. This is great.
You could not deny that the Intellivision, with a couple of years of extra development time on the 2600, had much better graphics.
Intellivision's a big competitor. It's starting to get more attention. But again, they don't have the arcade licenses, so they're making their own stuff.
One of those would be Astro Smash, which was sort of their answer to a Space Invaders Galaga type game that they wanted on the system.
Astro Smash was a very popular game for the Intellivision, so much so that it went on to replace Las Vegas Poker and Blackjack as the pack-in game. It was basically a cross between Space Invaders and Asteroids.
The interesting thing about Astro Smash, though, is for every asteroid that you let go past, you actually lose part of your score. So if you play the game safe, you don't gain any points.
Astro Smash is one of those games that anyone can pick up and play. It doesn't take a lot of, neurons firing to know how to play this game.
Was it a smashing good time,
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Press start.
The Defender sees lots of alien ships. The Defender sees lots of radar blips. Every blip is a ship.
Watch this, I got this guy.
On a body snatching trip.
What really stood out in my mind about Defender is the arcade cabinet. It is the boxiest arcade cabinet I think I've ever seen. It's like the coin box, lower part is a box, the monitor is a straight box, no curves to this machine whatsoever.
I like curves in my arcade cabinet just because it's something to hold on to.
Eugene Jarvis, who created Defender, was actually a pinball programmer for a very long time, and he continued to be after making Defender. He left Atari's pinball division, and he went to Williams. At Williams, he decided he wanted to try his hand at making a game. So he and Steve Ritchie, another famous pinball designer, started knocking around ideas of what would be cool, and they thought, well, hey, let's kind of take this Space Invaders concept but turn it on its side.
Defender had some really interesting things going for it, like the ability to scroll right and left, and it's been credited as the first side-scrolling shooter. During its development, the designers decided that Asteroids really had something going for it with that rapid right to left thing, but actually scrolling left and right was really forward thinking.
1980, it premiered at a trade show, not great response, but 1981, the game really takes off. It becomes one of the best-selling video games of all time.
All buttons controlled, you controlled the movement with one hand.
Asteroid style.
And there's like a bunch of buttons, the different, firing mechanisms.
I mean, so many different buttons, right? And here it is, what, 30 years later now? And you walk up to a Defender machine, and it's just like riding a bike. You remember exactly all the buttons. Here's reverse, here's hyperspace, here's thrust, here's fire. I mean, it's all right there, and it's like it never went away, right?
It's not just about shooting the enemies and staying alive, but you have to rescue the humanoids as
Yes.
well. The game has a freaking mini-map on the screen in 1981, which is huge.
And the map shows where the enemies are, it shows you where the humans are.
There's a lot going on. This is a really, really difficult game. Very hard, I think, to pick up and master in a quick time. It's not Pac-Man, right? It's not got the bright colors or anything to just draw you in and be like, oh, I know exactly what I'm doing. No, this game will kick your ass. Like a lot of games back then, sure, but it'll kick your ass.
So it was so popular that what Eugene Jarvis did was he went and he started basically a third-party development house called VidKids, and their first game was Stargate, which was the sequel to Defender.
It's a lot like Defender, and it's pretty much the same gameplay, and it has nothing to do with Kurt Russell.
And basically it was an instance of more of everything and better everything. Defender did not look bad by any means for the time.
But Stargate
looked even better.
It looked incredible with the flashy lines of your ship and the lasers you shot. It was like trippy.
You had to have mastered Defender, which is sort of its prequel, with 5 buttons and sticks and whatever, all these different controls.
And they added more enemy types in, and it was just a harder, better game. They sold that back to Williams, so he made money off of it while still working for Williams. And then he went on to make more pinball machines.
I still suck at this game. I appreciate it for what it is. Definitely. If it's in an arcade, I'll give it a whirl for a couple quarters, and then I will respectfully disengage.
That's actually a problem. That made the barrier to entry much higher. So you couldn't just walk up to Stargate and play it.
You have bested me, Mr. Defender and/or Stargate. I'm going off to play maybe some skee-ball, or perhaps some Donkey Kong, because I feel more safe with that game on the inside.
It's eat or be eaten as you chase through mind-boggling mazes, gobbling up points. Punch! Odyssey's computer keyboard lets you program a myriad of mazes all your own. Nobody else's maze game does that. KC Munchkin, available now. Programmed by you.
Atari thought to itself, let's not make a game that's sort of something like Pac-Man. Let's make actual Pac-Man. So they license Pac-Man.
So in '81, Magnavox, on the good old Odyssey 2, releases a game called KC Munchkin.
Magnavox does not do this with its Odyssey 2 system. Magnavox says, let's just straight up make a game that's like Pac-Man.
This was about a year before Pac-Man came out for the Atari 2600.
All I gotta say is KC Munchkin again, KC Munchkin.
It's about eating stuff. Dots. In a maze.
Now, of course they would do this because everybody was doing this. Nobody was, suing each other or anything.
And while it's a good Pac-Man clone, it is a Pac-Man clone.
Atari didn't like this game that was very similar to Pac-Man coming out on a home console before they had a chance to get their own, original version out. So they sued them.
A little further than a clone. In KC Munchkin, you look like Pac-Man, except you're blue. You're a pie. Part of pie, your mouth moves up and down like Pac-Man does.
Sort of have ears. Sort of.
Today, we wouldn't really consider this much of a ripoff, and really, certainly, probably nobody would end up suing over it in the environment that we have today.
But there's ghosts in the game as well that are different
They're
colors.
critters.
And there's a maze.
Sure, KC Munchkin's a better version, but still, regardless, it was deemed close enough.
So the case goes all the way up to the Supreme Court of the United States. And it was a landmark case because it was the first time there was any sort of decision made regarding video games and copyright.
Atari actually won the lawsuit on appeal.
Video games were so new. This really established, this court case, the notion of copyright law as far as it pertained to video games.
Yeah, they had to pull it off the shelves.
Could you imagine a game that ripped off another game's play style?
Ironically, the sequel to the game, Casey's Crazy Chase, no longer has the ghost-like things that you would eat. It has a centipede, so it was kind of up yours to Atari and their centipede.
It's a good thing we had the KC Munchkin lawsuit to prevent such things.
So there you go. So games like KC Munchkin and Crazy Kong, you can't cut it. You gotta think up your own game. Sorry.
What happened to this law that we just have all sorts of crap, just boop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doop, and by boop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doop, I mean just copying the same ideas over and 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 over.
So there you go. The legacy of KC Munchkin and Casey's Crazy Chase. More software companies suing each other.
1981 was the year of suing and Pac-Man clones. That sums up the entire year. Thank you for watching 1981.